All right, today is a fun video because I'm going over almost 30 campaigns, most of which I haven't even shown on this channel before, though there are some repeats, of course. That being said, I'm trying not to show just the same ones that I've been tracking, but instead new ones that are now on my radar that I'll be tracking moving forward. So, without further ado, let's get to it. All right, now this took quite a bit of time, mainly because I actually read through a lot of things and some didn't have a lot of information, so then I went and researched some of them. So while I'm going to stay at a fairly superficial level and go through these fairly quickly, otherwise this would be quite a long video, know that in the future I will be diving deeper into each and every single one of these. So if you were interested in that, be sure to subscribe, and if you appreciate the effort, then there is that like button, of course, or a comment definitely helps as well. Now, all of this is going to be linked down in the description below. That being said, I don't know if it'll max out the description field. So if so, bear with me. I'll try and find another resolution on how to solve that. So either way, there's going to be a lot of links in the description. So if you see something, go ahead and take a look. Now, starting things out, we're going to go from the least to the most. So this is the ones that are like either brand new or don't have a large following yet or haven't really been invested in yet in a preview, or there's a whole host of reasons why they might only have a few followers right now. But suffice it to say, obviously a lot of these I think will grow over time. That being said, what's interesting is the difference between the number 1 and number 2 on this list is almost double. So the number 1 is almost double the amount as the second highest one. It's about the same as the number 2 and number 3 added together. It is by far the leader right now when it comes to followers. It's an impressive amount, at least of what I am tracking. So all these are, of course, filtered through things that I think are actually kind of interesting, and therefore you might as well for if our alignment on games is anything close to relevant. All right, so starting things out, Shattered Divinity, The Seven Fragments. So this is an anime game, a JRPG campaign style game, specifically JRPG style. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. It's interesting that, like, anime and the number 7, I don't know what it is, right? But that's a little bit of almost a dirty term right now for a lot of you guys, because I know there have been other, let's just say, previous anime games that had 7 in it that didn't end up super well. But this actually looks kind of interesting. Now, what's interesting about this is besides some art and a little bit, that's it. What you just saw. Like, that is pretty much all they have. So this has just been kind of made up, and for the most part, they're working on the game. They are active in the comments, so you can read through those. I did as well, so that you can see what people are saying and how they're responding. Essentially, they will add more at the end of July, so feel free to check this out now, and then stay tuned, because if you click that follow button, then again, obviously, come July, you'll get notified when more comes up. So as I say, 1 to 4 players, 12 chapter campaign. At the end of each chapter, you have an option of fighting a boss or like a special boss or something like that, and you can also level up your character and just become stronger or whatever. You do have the special abilities. It's a kind of thing where you do basic attacks and stuff like that to build up a resource that then you consume for special abilities, which again, a lot of JRPGs use. It's a very common, trope, especially in MMOs. I think really do this a lot, where you kind of have to build the meter and then burn it, and then build the meter and then burn it, and then build the meter and then burn it, right? And so that's often the rotation is what they call it in MMOs, and that's kind of what you're doing here by the sounds of it. But either way, you do that. There's also, of course, some story as well, and you'll be, making, different choices and stuff like that. So it sounds pretty cool. It sounds like there'll be some world hopping involved there too. So it won't just be strictly to one world, which often means there's a lot of visual variety as well. So that'd be kind of interesting to see where that ends up. This one has 162 people following it right now. So very, very early, right? Follow now for a free gift. Right, but it's just a special art print, but you don't even know what it is yet, so it's very, very early. So, interesting. We'll have to revisit and see how many of these have later on, but that's at 162. Next up, we have Ahotnik, the relaunch. This one's at 174 followers. I believe I've shown this before a while back when they first announced the relaunch. Honestly, with 174 followers, I'm not sure this is ever going to come to be. This is a risk I have when going through these campaigns, is there are campaigns like there's not a Quantum Leap, but a Quantum Shock that I have been linking to for like 4 or 5 years now on this channel. I'm not sure it's ever going to happen. All right, there's There's people who work on a game and even get it kind of built up enough to have a campaign page and try it out. And then for whatever reason, life happens and it is these truly indie ones that aren't really a business, right? But it's just a person trying to do it. They might move on for any number of reasons, personal life stuff, who knows? So will Ahotnik come? I'm not so sure. And even if it does, will it be successful? I don't know. It looked kind of cool. The grid is a bit gritty, and what I mean by that is it's very, like, you can see it here, right, where it's very visual. This is a grid, so it's not really a lot of immersion there, but the minis looked pretty cool, and I liked the name Ahotnik. It sounded kind of neat, and I'm sure I'm saying it wrong, but that's fine. Either way, 174 followers might still happen. They have gone to a campaign once, so will they again in the relaunch? I'm not sure. I guess we'll find out. Next up, at 266 people, are Elements of Power. I think I did link to this the first time it launched, like the first time it showed up. This one's kind of interesting. They don't show it as well as I think they could. So you see it here, right? And you see it here, and then you see some minis, and we'll go over the minis in a moment here, and that's it, right? So this is a skirmish battle arena board game for 2 players specifically, right? But you don't really see that in here. Like, the most of the game you see is this, and it's not quite sure. You can see by the measurements it's probably what it is, but it doesn't show it very well in the preview page, if that makes sense. But it honestly seems kind of neat. I think the big thing it needs is some variety. I think all skirmish games need variety. It's super important. I pick variety over even balance when it comes to that, or like raw balance. It's just... I'm okay if there are some factions that are a little bit stronger than others or anything like that. I play casually anyway. It's not like I'm playing in tournaments, and the variety to build different teams I think is really huge here. What they do instead, though, and this is what's kind of interesting here. So they're going to have 6 characters, 7 with the campaign is kind of what they're going for. But when you pick them, you get like 4 points or whatever, right? And then you pick these points to actually get some, but not all of their abilities. And so, as you see, this guy here, Nagmar, he has a Hero Hurl, a Battle Hungry, he's got Spinning Fists, he's got Avalanche Lunge, he's got Grab and Pound, right? So he has all these different options, and you pick between those, and then you kind of group them together. Now, one thing to note here on the minis is they are definitely the old style, and what I mean by that is maybe a classic style. It's not a true scale. So true scale is where it's very much exactly like we are in real life. Whereas this heroic scale or this classic scale or anything like that, they typically have larger hands and larger heads. It's what minis used to always be. And so you'll kind of see that here as well. Often it's because of the scale of them. It just made sense to focus on that. It didn't look too weird proportion-wise, but then when they're smaller, it's a lot easier to have more detail there where it kind of matters, right? And it made it to where wrists and stuff weren't super small and where they would like break and stuff like that. So it is very much classic in that sense. It looks like some of them have a little bit of basing, but not all of them. And I'm not sure if there's anything else going on here. I know in the comments, again, I was reading through those, there's some kind of like antic transdimensional cat that causes havoc within the game or something like that, something interesting. So definitely something to look into more as they start writing updates and show more of the game off. All right, next up at 328 followers is Kur-Nu-Gi. Maybe I'm saying that right, maybe not. This is definitely a Euro-style game, though it does have a lot of minis as well. Well, not a lot of minis, but it has a fair amount of minis. But a very interesting theme as well. You're essentially on the path of the dead, and you're trying to escape it. So you're trying to get like escape points to literally come back to life, essentially, and go to the land of the living or the world of living or whatever. The art looks really, really pretty. The style of it seems really cool. For a Eurogamer, they see this and they just start drooling. I see it and get anxiety. There's a lot of stuff going on here. A variety of different systems and stuff. They talk around some of the mythologies and stuff, which is kind of cool, and how you can play these to kind of work on that. They also have a group of, I think it's 7 cards that make up like the world. So you're playing mostly on this. But then if we scroll down here, they have this right here, right? Where they actually have like almost a little path and stuff. As you can see, it kind of reminds me of like a Tainted Grail or an Aeon Trespass Odyssey style like card laying map area thing, which is kind of neat. So there's obviously like most Euro games, a lot of different systems at play here, but it also looks kind of streamlined to me, at least in what they've discussed here. There's probably more to it, though, is what I suspect, based off of the pictures. But either way, that seems like a pretty cool themed Euro, if I may say so myself. All right, next up is Cosmic Quest. This one is at 429 people following. It's kind of interesting because you have all these like low ones that either are just announced or, again, I've covered Cosmic Quest already once before, maybe twice before. So some of these, again, are repeats, and they've been out a while and just haven't really gained a following. And other ones are just brand new, and that's why they're not getting a following. So all kinds of differences there. This is coming out fall 2024, and they did say they are going to pick up a lot of the advertising around fall, so there might be a lot more traction coming up. They're also not offering a freebie, which has a follow button, not get clicked as much. That doesn't necessarily mean the backing, I don't think, is too much different. I'm not sold on those really being a causation one to the other. Either way, you get this free gift. You do get these minis, or that many specifically. Very much based on other IP, right? So you have kind of this Thanos character with the gauntlet, but at the same time he's wearing, or he has like a cube, like a cosmic cube kind of thing. So there's a variety of inspirations there. Their renders, they did add a bit of a texture to it, just so it looks a little bit, I guess, nicer as a render. Obviously, it's just a render here. This character here specifically, I struggle with because I think they look really good, but they are a different art style than the other. Now, comics come in all sorts of styles of art, so like I'm not exactly against that per se. But it is a very drastic difference how she looks compared to a lot of the others. So if we get past even some of these heroes here and get towards, you can see some of the other minis here, and again, they have them pre-render colored here, but these are some of those. And again, you're rolling dice there. But looking at her compared to even like this guy here, you see this art here and this art here, to me, it's very, very different. So it's indie. It's obviously indie. As you can see, it's a card game here with minis. You're going through and conquering different planets. Here's how you get your gambit points, which are kind of like your victory points here. So there's a variety of ways you can actually win it, which is kind of cool as well. The minis do seem pretty nice. And of course, you can get them pre-painted as well. So, yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool. I'll definitely keep taking a look at it just because I like the comic theme, if nothing else. All right, next up is Restart by Teetotum Game Studios. I think I've shared this once before. This is kind of interesting. It's a tableau game, but it's one where your like child self and adult self are like trying to change time. And so you're changing the tableau. And so when you come again, then your past future self is no longer viable because now it's a new future self. And you're trying to essentially like solve, and like save the world. Right, but you're going from like crisis to crisis and trying to glean information each time. So it's almost like a tableau, roguelite, time travel iteration. It's interesting. I think it actually sounds cool, at least on paper. Now I need to see like raw mechanics, of course, but I like the idea of modifying a tableau long term like that. I think that sounds pretty cool. It's at 563 followers, and definitely something that I think looks kind of interesting. If nothing else, a little bit different, and I appreciate that. All right, next up we have Oghmu, Age of Discordance. Now, this is a relaunch, essentially. So they've already tried a campaign once, and it failed. And honestly, that's kind of unfortunate. And honestly, I'm not seeing anything different in this one either, so we'll see. So 686 people following. It looks very unique. I love the maps in particular, and the characters. The world seems quite different. So this is, again, another kind of like skirmish game. It's a fast-paced, dice-driven skirmish game of strategy and luck, right, that simulates unpredictability of fluctuations of thrilling and heroic combat. So it's a skirmish game, right? But it looks obviously different than any other skirmish game I've seen. So I appreciate that right off the bat. The maps, I think, look gorgeous. It kind of remind me of Acamonia a little bit. I'm wondering if it's the colors. I'm not exactly sure. But as you can see, these maps look amazing. I love just how different they are, how unique they feel, how they're all kind of a gloomy, which kind of fits the theme, I think, a little bit. Now, one thing for these hero tokens that I've noticed anyway is if it wasn't for the color, I'd not be able to always tell the faction. And what I mean by that is like this wizard holding a staff, to me, is quite similar to this wizard holding a staff, which is similar to, some other one perhaps that's, it just, I don't know, that they don't necessarily stand out to a fantastic degree in my mind. When like, to me, they look fairly in line here. In fact, even this one compared to this one, thankfully they're colored. Almost too, when it comes to a theme, if you're too on point with a theme, everything looks a bit samey, right? So you almost have to have a theme of variety. It's kind of interesting in that sense, but it looks cool. I think it looks neat. You can read more about all the different stuff. Again, you get all sorts of summons and all sorts of kind of fun stuff there. One of the things to note here is that everything you just saw was pretty much the old campaign page. So that's kind of my worry is, and why I said I haven't really seen anything different here. So will this succeed? I don't know, but you can keep track of it, obviously, with that follow button. Again, link down in the description below, of course. All right, next up we have the Thinning Veil Red Mist. This has 704 people following. The Cormac campaign, I'm just going to summarize it as that it was a long name, did successfully fund. Obviously, we haven't even gone to like a pledge manager yet. That's still, I guess, in the works. In the meantime, they've been busy selling like minis, like 75mm minis, and you get 20% discount if you pledge it. And they're doing all this other stuff. I'm a little cagey around companies that instantly go to selling more product after a campaign before they even get the pledge manager. I understand like striking when the iron's hot, and I understand like, obviously wanting to invest in your system, but it just feels a little like the focus isn't there, right? From a backer perspective. I'm not saying there isn't. I'm just saying that's like a worry about mine. I also say that because this Red Mist is a skirmish game within the same universe that has different rules, whereas there is a Thinning Veil game coming out that has more of like what the Carmack one was. In other words, it's a full game using the old original system. Both campaigns are here on GameFound as previews, and I don't even know which one comes first. I didn't see anything in an FAQ. I didn't really see anything listed. I'm not sure which is coming first. I don't know. This one, again, a lot of it's AI art, right? So they definitely use the AI art to keep costs down, I guess, or whatever. But this map looks cool for a skirmish game, so I'll give them that, I guess. And yeah, if you like the world that they've created here, the skirmish game might be kind of cool. I know they have a lot planned, and I know they're very creative, and I want to make sure that creativity is focused on delivering product, not just making campaigns and making up ideas of games. Does that make sense? And with nothing delivered yet, I'm a little cautious around launching 2 different campaigns and a miniature line. It just, to me, it seems it focuses on creating campaigns and ideas. We're selling product here, right? At the end of the day, I know you're not selling the product, but honestly, that's why everybody is here. And so we just want to make sure that's delivered. Otherwise, if you go too quick, too fast, well, you can ask Mythic Games how that ends up. All right, next up we have Biohazard Raging Outbreak. 711 people are backing this one. So actually, it's just barely over the last one, right? So again, some of these are really, really close. Biohazard is kind of interesting. Obviously, it's got some actually kind of nice minis, a lot of wooden tokens and stuff like that. It's essentially like, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. It's like, it looks like if you took Pandemic and Ticket to Ride and Risk and combined them all into a Euro, which is kind of interesting. So you're like building barricades and blocking off areas and fighting off this outbreak that's moving around, kind of a Pandemic kind of style. You get all these different cards you get. So you have these action cards that you can then buy and play. You can see you can build those barriers. You can develop the vaccine, right? And you have these regions that it spreads to, and you don't know exactly where it's going to spread until it does, right? So there's all these different things you can do in it. It seems kind of cool, actually. I dig it. I think it actually looks like a fun, let's figure out this map and solve this map kind of thing, which is kind of interesting. But again, it's also competitive because all these other factions are kind of doing their own thing, which is also kind of cool, which is why everybody has colored tokens and stuff like that as well. I don't know, it seems kind of neat. They also have foil cards. I'm a fan of foil cards. Anything that's got foil cards, I'm excited about. So I'm cool with foil. In the card games, I think more cards need foil. In this one, it's just, I think, resource cards. It's not like it's huge, but still, I appreciate the foil. All right, next up, we have RAYMAN, the board game. This is by FlyOS Games, and it has 1,214 followers. So now, from now on, we're at over 1,000. In fact, it ramps up pretty quick here, pretty shortly. But RAYMAN, the board game, honestly, I'm surprised it's not bigger. I think one of the reasons is just because I'm not sure FlyOS is great at getting the recognition and line of sight when it comes to their board games compared to other IP-based board game companies. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying, some people just are really good at striking gold and get all the hubbub about it and get all the buzz around it, and then some don't, and that's kind of interesting. Also, we haven't seen a lot from this, so when it comes to RAYMAN, the board game, obviously it's from the newer version of RAYMAN. You can see some of the other sidekicks you get or whatever. I have a lot of good memories from this game. Screaming at my kids and my wife as we play it, and chase chests and unlock nymphs and different costumes, and I like the IP, so I'm excited to see what they can do as a board game. Right? They talk about pick your hero, dodge obstacles, and save the teensies and epic races. So I'm assuming it's competitive, where you're going through and trying to dodge and go through the map as quick as possible. Kind of like the treasure chest saves there a little bit. All right, next up, we have Ascending Fate. This one I am super excited about. It's by Freebooter Games, which I love the models that they do. It's such a unique and interesting world that's different than everything else. Very artistic. A lot of their original molds are actually still hand molded, not digitally. Some of them are, but either way, I really, really appreciate it. I think that's super awesome, and they have a pretty cool game system as well. Now, Freebooters has been, pirates and goblins and ghosts and, all that kind of stuff, whereas Ascending Fate is the sci-fi skirmish is what they're doing here. So this is at 1,414 people following. This is something that honestly, first of all, the free gift is actually pretty cool. You get this little mech guy on a wheel thing. I think that's a fun one. I'm excited about this. Like I said, I love Freebooters. I'm excited about Ascending Fate here instead of Freebooter Fate. And hopefully I can get my hands on this and let you guys know. I would love to do that. I think that'd be great, but no promises, of course. You can see some of the factions here. Again, they're still spilling out some of the other ones you can get, which is pretty cool. You got a huge variety here. They do have a campaign that introduces you to the story or to the gameplay. So it's not a skirmish game where you just have to sit there and read for a while up front. So that's typically what I do anyway, because I like knowing all the rules. But you can see there's already a few people that have already played it. Lucky guys there. A lot of it is going to be, and you're going to see this in comments, German. Because the Freebooters Fate is very popular in Germany, but not as much here in America, which is really unfortunate. Hopefully, Ascending Fate maybe changes that. All right, next up we have Ronin Warrior, the Samurai board game. I've shared this before. I'm surprised it actually got 1,511 followers. I have not heard a peep out of this since. They had a little bit of a splash. They had, again, really cool art on the boxes. Their minis look super cool. They're not all viable when it comes to print. See how tiny some of these things are. Obviously, that you can't make an actual miniature that. You can just make a 3D object that you show online. That's skinny. And it's this bright blue, which wouldn't show up as well. But overall, the design is still super cool. It still looks neat. As you can see, it has the full choices, the typical making choices through a story, solo, co-op strategy. Seems kind of interesting. So we'll see kind of what comes from this and if it actually comes. Hopefully we find more information here soon. All right, next up is Zoo Tycoon, the board game. This is a reprint plus a New Shores expansion. I just like Zoo Tycoon. Obviously, 2,144 other followers like Zoo Tycoon. If you grew up doing any of these Tycoon games, they can be a lot of fun. And it's a pretty easy, I think, translation to board game / card game. So adding the New Shores will be kind of cool. It says, this is your zoo in a box with over 100 exciting species, so that's pretty neat. And it is a second edition. Now, why that edition changed on as a reprint, I don't know. We'll find out more soon enough, I imagine. All right, next up is Forsaken, Dante's Inferno. This one has 2,387 people following it. This one's kind of interesting. It's by a former patron, actually, and he became a patron and then started making this game or whatever, and it seems pretty cool to me. Definitely has some cool art, some cool minis, a cool idea, a very unique board where you're turning this around, you're trying to trap each other, playing as all these terrible characters from history trying to escape hell, essentially. Now, obviously, it's not coming out Q1 2024, right? This is an old page, and actually, you have to go to updates to find any kind of new information here, but there is a fairly new information here. So as you can see, this was posted 5/19 of this year, where he talks about quite a few different things. Now, one of the things they're doing is they're going to change it from penance or atonement from Forsaken, because Forsaken can get confused with the other Forsaken game by game trays, and they don't necessarily want to do that. I think it's still fine. I don't really... Like, Forsaken means something very different than penance and atonement. These are both, in fact, I like penance more than atonement, at least. Atonement almost seems like, oh yeah, I can play as this terrible person, but don't worry, we'll get better necessarily. And I know that's kind of the idea, and it's a play on that, but still, I guess penance over that, my opinion, but I still like the Forsaken Dante's Inferno myself. But what do I know? Here you can see some of the other minis, though, and they look great. They look super cool, I think. Definitely interesting, differently designed. They all come from different eras and stuff like that, so you get a large variety there. And as you can see, at least right now, Penance is winning that kind of contest here. But either way, this is coming out, I'm assuming, somewhat soon. It sounds like from that update, they're doing quite a bit, talking with other companies and stuff like that to really kind of keep progressing it. I think they said there's 3 people working on it now, which is pretty cool. All right, following that, we have Dungeon Twister 20th Anniversary Edition. Let me know if you've played Dungeon Twister. Honestly, I'd never heard of it, which is unfortunate because it sounds like it was a pretty big classic, pretty big game, and does things a little bit different. So one of the cool things that it does is it has like a magnet that you pick up loot with, which is kind of interesting. So obviously with the Dungeon Twister, the idea is that all the dungeons moving around constantly, right? And it is a competitive game where essentially you're trying to like, you know, show off and be cool, right? Which is kind of neat. It's not like a super serious, like, oh, we're trying to save the world kind of thing necessarily. But, and it's built mostly for 2 players, but it can do more. But I think 2 players sounds like it's kind of the ideal there where you guys compete against each other. One of the cool things here is this magnet. So essentially, and I think this shows it pretty well, you pick up like a sword and it shows a little sword there, and then you are actually move around with it, which is kind of cool. I think that's pretty neat. So yeah, there will be a lot more expansions and stuff like that. So if you were a fan of this is definitely something to get. I don't know. Some of these old games don't translate very well to modern gaming sensibilities. This is a different time to be alive right now. We're all different. We're all matured as gamers. Let me know. Do you think Dungeon Twister will still be good all these years later, especially if you don't have nostalgia for it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. But either way, 2,635 people are following that one, which is pretty darn big. So obviously it was popular. All right, next up is the Thinning Veil. This is the like real one here, right? The non-skirmish one. This is the one that they tried to launch on Kickstarter, failed, came to GameFound with a smaller one, succeeded, and now they're hoping to get the main one unlocked again. This is 2,778 people are following, so definitely quite a bit of followers. Definitely people that are excited about it. Again, know that a lot of it is AI art, so they don't. I don't know if they necessarily spell it out anymore, but it definitely is. You're going to see a lot of this, a lot of text, a lot of AI art. That's definitely, they love the world that they've made, and so that's mostly what this is. I think this is coming out later. I think they're going to do the skirmish game first, and then this. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what they do. All right, next up we have Dragonbond Quest, a cooperative card game for 1 to 4 players. This is by Draco Studios. This is by the creators of Warhammer Quest. Honestly, I'm kind of interested. I think it sounds kind of cool. I was in contact to maybe play this a while ago, and just nothing really materialized from that, which is kind of a bummer. Definitely interested in like the Warhammer Quest, but I wasn't really around when that was a thing. When it comes to like being in the board game industry, I'm pretty new. When it comes to that, I don't have a long history of it anyway. So Dragon Ball, though, the Dragon Ball universe is very cool, so I'd be interested in the Dragon Ball Quest. That sounds awesome. Now again, where this is at, I don't know. We're at almost 3,000 followers, 2,817. Hopefully it comes out soon though, right? All right, next up is the Last Mechs. This is another one where I've shared it before. It does still say coming 2024, so I'm assuming that's the case. It has a dungeon crawler, 1 to 4 player, right? Campaign through comic. It's co-op, right? A very common thing there, except the theme, the style is a little bit different for the Last Mechs, which is kind of cool. 3,841. So now, again, we've already almost shot up to 4,000. We're getting into the big ones here now. This has been long coming. I think it looks kind of cool. I'm excited to see more and excited to see it actually launch. All right, next up we have Starlock. Starlock is by Din of Imagination. They're kind of a bigger company, and this is a big push by them. 3,955, almost 4,000 people looking into this. It's a skirmish kind of board game kind of thing, which is pretty cool. With the terrain and the hex tiles, it reminds me of some old school skirmish games, which is kind of fun. I really liked this. So much to do. Build mechanics, build machines, hire helpers, buy equipment, recruit new gang members, repair your spaceships and modules, collect resources, battle your opponents, multiple strategies to win, right? You can just have a really big economy and get all the resources and get better units. Or you can get machines and helpers, or there's a night outside your base mechanic or something around that line, or just getting more control. The minis also look pretty cool. I think they actually look pretty darn nice here. The art style looks pretty cool as well. You get tons of this beautiful art here on these cards. Again, I don't know if it's AI or not, but it looks nice either way. So it looks cool. It looks cool to me. These minis, it's unfortunate that they're colored. I hate colored minis. I think they make every single mini look worse. Dark gray is the color that you want. However, they still look quite nice. They all look a little bit different for the most part. I think some of them blend in a little bit, like a lot of these purple guys. I'm not sure I just glance and know who's different, right? But otherwise, you can also kind of tell the style, right? All these guys are like runners, right? All these guys have ranged weapons here, right? So you can kind of get a sense of what they are. These guys all have backpacks on, right? So whatever their role is, I think is good within each faction, which is also kind of nice. Again, you get all the hex tile tokens and stuff like that. I think it looks cool. So I'm excited to see more, see exactly how it plays, of course. Yeah, definitely kind of interested in this as well. All right, next up, this is a wild one. Historica, Arcanum, Cults of London. This is at 7,000. Again, this is jumping up here. 7,425 people signed up for this. It looks super cool, just by the looks of it. Now, you don't see everything, and it's kind of interesting, by the way, because they rate everything here on casual to hardcore. It's a 7 on hardcore. Chill or high octane, it's on a 9 on high octane, and the luck versus strategy, it's an 8. Yet your first unlock is a dice tower, which I just find kind of funny that it's no, it's very strategic, not very luck based, and there's a dice tower. There is some dice, but that's not everything. Obviously, there's a lot here. They don't really show everything. They just show bits and pieces. Here's a little bit here. Right, it talks about here there's a Eldritch Onslaught solo mode, or for 3 to 4 player campaign there's War of the Cults, but they will be unlocking a co-op, a versus mode, and a 1 versus all mode as well, hopefully. That's kind of interesting. You can see some of your operators here, everything from Sherlock Holmes, which is kind of cool. Some of the different things you can do here, which is neat. And then it tells you this is kind of how it plays, but again, very, very high level. It's interesting to get almost 8,000 followers and not really dive into anything at a super granular rate, which is kind of cool. These factions all sound awesome. And that's mostly it. There are some updates, and each update will show you more about the game. So you'll see a little bit more. This Cults of London, this almost reminds me of Persona 5 style UI that they're doing here. So it's kind of all over the place a little bit, right? Because you have that, but then if you go to this one down here, it's a very different art style, right? So it's kind of interesting. But notice they're not showing the game proper. They're just showing bits and pieces, but it all sounds and looks cool. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this turns out for sure. For sure. It does have a area control, dudes on a map kind of style thing going on here. But obviously there's a lot of I don't know if it's engine building or what. I'm not exactly sure what you're doing building up all this other stuff, but guess we'll find out. Next up is 20 Strong Tanglewoods. This is probably the only one I have on here that's coming out super, soon here. This is in 8 days. So the other ones are almost, in a quarter or this year or whenever, right? But this one is another 20 strong. Also, it's doing quite well. People are liking it. In fact, 9,607 people are following this one. And what's interesting about this is it's themed. There's 3 of them, but one's Goldilocks, one's Snow White, one's Red Riding Hood. So they're just based off colors, which is kind of cool. I think that works. That's neat. Sure, why not? So yeah, if you're into this 20 strong series, this is definitely something to look at for sure, because there's just more of it. Obviously, they can produce these pretty darn quick because they seem to have a pretty big turnaround on having ideas, making new stuff, and then delivering it. Because at the end of the day, it's all just kind of cards. So it works out pretty well for everybody, I think. I think that's awesome. All right, next up we have Story of Mini. This is one I know a lot of you are interested in. This is one I am bummed about. I specifically looked for this during Essen last year and did not find it. 10,796 people are following it. It looks good. I've mentioned it a few times. It definitely looks like an old school RPG board game, which I know a lot of people are going to be super interested in. That being said, a lot of those typically don't have the polish that this one seems to have. This one does seem to have a bit more polish when it comes to how nice the miniatures are and the UI elements and the overall structure of it and just how the campaign's running. But you can customize your character, build it very nicely. It looks very pretty. It seems cool. It seems cool. There's not really a lot of negative to say about it yet. We'll have to see how things turn out, obviously, but 10,000 people. That's not bad. It's not bad. Next up is Star Trek Ascendancy, The Final Frontier. This is an expansion plus some new stuff for Star Trek Ascendancy, which is a 7.9/8 rated on BGG. Also, you do get a free gift. It's a dice tray, which is kind of fun. And yeah, it's, if you like Star Trek, this is definitely something to go for. It's one of the better board games, is my understanding. It definitely looks cool, so there's that. I think it's a 7.8 there, actually, is where it's at. So I know it was somewhere around there. I think it might actually be a 7.9 now. Has all the expansions, includes every expansion ever, right? It has a new race that's going to be coming, and we don't know exactly who yet. Obviously, it's showing, these alternative ships that you'll be able to get as well. There's a custom storage solution, which is cool. New planet civilization tech cards to be discovered. So it just adds more to it. So if you've been interested in this, or if you've been interested in maybe getting into it, or just like the IP, might be something to go for you. This is by Gale Force 9. They do a lot of IP related stuff, most of it retail based. It is kind of interesting when they do come to crowdfunding to see what they do with it, though. And again, over 10,000 people ready for this one. All right, we're getting towards the top here, guys, and it's going to ramp up again very, very quickly here. So it's kind of interesting. How you guys doing? Hopefully you've enjoyed this one. This is kind of interesting to me. This is Sirens: The Deep Sea. 8 days. So again, this is another one that's coming out. I think this is the only other one that's coming out like super duper soon. 11,126 people. I have no idea when it got this many followers or even kind of how. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that Forgotten Tales, they were like KOA Studio, whatever. They changed their name. They haven't really had like success before. And so it's interesting to see so much drive on this. In fact, they announced this really early on. And it was pretty much that. They had a picture and they had a mini. And that's pretty much all anybody knew of this. And now they've added a whole bunch, which is kind of cool. It looks like people are really liking this. Again, 11,000 plus people are into this right now. It is a different theme, that's for sure. And there is a lot kind of going on too, which is kind of cool. So you pick your main person here, right? You have a Deceptor, a Paladin, a Herald, a Counterblade, a Hunter, a Valkyrie, a Berserker, or a Rift Mage. And you have all these different bosses, too, that you're going to be fighting, which is kind of interesting. As you can see in the game mode, they have quite a bit of stuff here. And if you just want to, play it, you can even do that, too. But otherwise, they have Escort, Mixed, Economy Battle, different style scenarios. Each one's different. What they say is they have a lot of different rules. You don't need them all at the same time. Different scenarios will use different mechanics, and you are only using a subset here. Some of this still I don't understand so much. Like they have a game round and they have a game phases, but surely there's not 10 phases within a game. To me, phases is like the attack phase and the movement phase. Not even Warhammer has that many phases. I hope it's not that complex, and it doesn't seem to be. There are more phases than there are like rounds in the game. Like I'm not sure what they're doing there. But they show a lot of the different stuff, and a lot of it is getting resources and converting that to anything from equipment to abilities. And so you explore, construct, and refine. You're going through there, and as you can see, you can get different stuff there. And then, of course, you can develop, which increases some of your equipment and then your stats that you're doing. Then you can craft equipment, develop your siren. Like I said, there is a skill tree where you get to adjust your points how you see fit, which is kind of cool. You can see different routes there. And then you also have these special abilities you can use, which is kind of cool. You spend something for that. It goes into some combat and how that works and how you go on hunts and stuff like that. There's like these slipstreams that you can like rocket through, and then there's like whirlpools and earthquakes and stuff. The bosses attack everybody around them, so you're rolling a lot of dice. It looks like there's a lot of fun stuff to play here. There's even 3D terrain that you're dealing with. It's kind of cool. There's a lot here. A lot more than I thought. They've definitely developed a lot of it. Which is pretty cool. And again, 11,000 people. I remember covering this, and I remember it looked like nothing. And now suddenly it's a thing. In fact, it's a big thing. And that's kind of cool. That's the power of crowdfunding for you. Next up, we have Dune, the Kwisatz Haderach. I don't know, the main guy edition. This doesn't do a good job of showing you. This was the one I was thinking of. That's like a 7.9 right now. I think they have 8 here now. This is lands in 2025, so it's a ways out. It doesn't tell you anything, including even like what this game is. So you kind of have to look at it. That's what I had to do. I had to look it up. Oh, this is like the one that's just titled Dune. It's a very retail-focused game. Again, this is by Gale Force 9, so that's typically what they do. It's this round board and a whole bunch of tokens that you're moving around and some cards. And it looks like it's actually a pretty decent game that a lot of people could enjoy. I don't know what this Kwisatz Haderach edition is necessarily going to do, but it's going to do something besides just make it nice, I guess. So we'll see. It'll be kind of interesting to see how they add to that. All right, we are in the top 4 now. So again, we're getting close here. Again, this was 13,153 people. Heroes of Might and Magic 3 is the 4th highest that I'm covering. It is at 18,238. And all this is 3 expansions to the pre-existing game. And it goes to show how, first of all, IP matters. In fact, I'm sure you've noticed how much IP is on this, and you're going to keep seeing IP in these top ones. For the most part, IP wins, right? That being said, good IP is even better. Like IP that's used well, that is implemented well into a board game, so you can experience something you like in the board game space. Anytime at the second campaign and people are still interested in it, almost 20,000 people are interested in it, you know they did something right. Right, so obviously the first one was a hit with most of the people that got it. Otherwise, this wouldn't have been such a big thing. So that's super cool to see. I've shown this off quite a few times now at this point. They have some updates to show more because this is like a TBA, but they have some of the minis here that they'll show you. Obviously, again, people are voting on it pretty well here. I did play the game. I don't know. This quote barely makes sense to me. I must have been casually, so I don't know what's going on there. It seems barely English, but I do have a speed review there where I kind of run through it pretty quick, but pretty detailed. On what I thought of the game. So, yeah, feel free to check it out. And, yeah, they're adding more expansions. So that's cool, too. Okay, top three. Lands of Evershade is at 25,365 people following. This is one that is not IP-based, so that's kind of cool to see. It's for Q4 2024, so it's still a ways out. It's by Awaken Realms, sorry. And, yeah, again, it's a typical touched up AI art that Awakened Realms is apparently known for now. That being said, this seems to be done quite a lot better. It seems pretty cool, I think. The world seems very neat. I love this like split like guy, like that's super cool. So they don't show a lot here, right? The one thing that's kind of interesting here is we're talking about an RPG / board game. So I think they're really trying to meld the two together where it's either an RPG heavy board game or a RPG with a lot of board game elements. Either way, they're comparing it to stuff like Aetherfields, to Tainted Grail, stuff like that. This is very much an experience game by the sounds of it, as opposed to like a hard, like mechanical, crunchy game, which I think they're really good at. They're good at games that look really nice and that are enjoyable to play for the people that buy them, but not necessarily like the most balanced, overtly like amazingly like huge, gameplay. If that makes sense. That makes sense. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, there are games you play for all sorts of reasons. For this, I think it's going to be very much a one where you want to go through the lands of Evershade and experience it. I think that's what they're leaning on, and I think that's probably a smart idea for what it looks like they're trying to do here. It just says that it will be a dice-based RPG system with tactical combat. But again, is this like an RPG? Like with a game master? It's kind of hard to tell. So we'll find out more about it, of course. But if you know any more about it, I know sometimes they do live streams and stuff I may have missed. Do let us know down in the comments below. Okay, top two. Second one is Don't Starve the board game. This one's going to be big, obviously. It's by Glass Cannon Unplugged. They do a lot of IP-based games. And from what I can tell, they do them fairly well, too, where people enjoy them. And so for 25,742 people, they are interested in Don't Starve the board game. Honestly, I think this is a very easy win for a board game, right? With a lot of different cards as you're crafting different things and gathering materials and doing all that stuff. The video game plays in a way to where I can see the board game version of it almost in my head. So I think it'll do very well. Again, there is the co-op part of it, though they do have a true solo, which again makes sense for Don't Starve. 1 to 4 player roguelite survival co-op. That's exactly how it is, so that makes sense, of course. This is going to be big. This is going to be awesome. And again, the art style is going to look cool, just like Don't Starve. It'll be nice. I think that'll be cool. Now, remember, a few things here. First of all, there are more things. In fact, I think just in my last one, right? Like I showed you, here's Valheim up here, right? Obviously, I didn't link to that one. It's not the number one here. There are others. I'll try to link down to those down below as well. Some I just recently covered. I don't want to like rehash it because it was like literally like 2-3 videos ago. But there's obviously a lot coming, and that's super cool. The board game industry on crowdfund is still doing very, very well, though there is a lot of IP. I've noticed a lot of IP. Number one, almost double this, right? This is a 25,000. This next one is almost a 50,000. It's big. It's definitely going to be the big one. And before I even show you what it is, I have the prototype right there. So I will be unboxing it. I'll be playing it. I'll tell you guys about it in detail. I'll answer your questions. Don't you worry. I'm excited to get my hands on it more than I already have, because I also played it at Essen. That is Cyberpunk 2077, the board game. This is by Go On Board. They have been doing very well. I have been playing Go On Board games since Titans, way back in the day. I called it the Better Rising Sun. I loved it, actually. And they have come a long way since then, that's for sure. Hopefully I have too. We're at 46,637 people. That's a lot. It's a lot of people that are interested in this one. Again, it's almost 50,000 people. This is going to be big. It definitely is. One of the nice things I like about this, and now that they've shown off more, and as you can see, I had some comments right there even on it. One of the cool things, and they have a lot of updates, so feel free to, I'm not going to dive into them here, but you can see the updates there on a lot of the stuff they're doing, is people who played Six Siege, from what I can tell, really enjoyed it, just like I did. Outside of the stupid campaign stuff that went on with Mythic Games, the game itself, I think, plays really well for an FPS, a competitive FPS. One of the cool things this does is it takes something kind of sort of similar when it comes to that feel with like the timer and stuff like that, and interacting with there and taking a breather and then being in a gunfight, but it's co-op. And I like that twist. I like having both options there too, so you guys can work together and try to, do your stuff, and then it'll be. I think I'm excited. I'm excited to dive into it more. I gotta unbox it first, see what all is in the prototype, play it as much as I can, and then let you guys know, of course. But yeah, I'm excited for it. Either way, 46,000, not too bad. I know even my wife's excited for it, if nothing else, to paint the minis, because Cyberpunk minis are bright and colorful and interesting and cool and different. And yeah, it should be pretty good. I'm excited. So, I need a drink after all that. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Again, there is everything down in the description below, of course, and more probably. Anything you can fit in there. Again, if you appreciated the effort this video took, a like, a comment does help a lot. Thank you so much. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you want to see these dived into more when they launch on campaigns, all this kind of stuff will be in future news videos of mine, including that Cyberpunk review, unboxing, all that. That's coming up here too, of course. So subscribe if you do want to see more. It does help the channel out, and it helps you actually see those, because you can't even always rely on the algorithm. Even when you are subscribed, It's even worse when you're not. So feel free to do that. Hopefully that helps you actually see the future coverage on all of this and more. Guys, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye, guys.